The village of Ukona slept under a heavy blanket of tradition. Small huts crowded together, their roofs like drooping shoulders. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and fear. This was a place ruled by old ways, where the drums spoke louder than words, and the village elders held the power of life and death. For many years the people of Ukona had lived by the word of the oracle. This mysterious person, hidden in secrecy, controlled every part of their lives. From their first breath, their futures were decided. Boys were meant to be warriors, toughened by the hot sun and endless training. Girls, however, were raised for only one thing: to become wives and mothers. This was the world Adera was born into. She entered it quietly, a small life given to a world that offered little comfort. Her mother, Ebel, held her close, whispering prayers for strength and resilience. Ebel knew that life in Ukona was a mix of obedience and sacrifice. Adera was like a wildflower growing in cracked earth. Even as a kid, her spirit shone brightly, fighting against the darkness that seemed to cover Ukona. Unlike the other children, who walked with their heads down and their voices quiet, Adera wanted to learn everything. She listened closely to the stories the elders told, her mind full of curiosity. Her father, a tired farmer named Obiora, helped her curiosity grow. He saw in his daughter a spark of rebellion, a refusal to accept the world as it was. In the quiet time after work, he would teach her about the stars, their ancient light, a symbol of hope in the darkness. Adera's best friend was her older brother, Chike. Their love was as strong as the roots of an old tree, and they shared secret dreams and hopes. Chike, who was supposed to be a warrior, would secretly give Adera wooden swords, teaching her how to fight when the sun went down. He believed in her spirit, in her power to make her own way, even in a world that wanted to hold her back. But even the strongest friendships can be tested, and when Adera turned 12, a dark cloud hung over their special bond. The day Adera turned 12 started like any other day, the sun hot in the sky. But for Adera, this day was important. It was the day she would learn her fate from the oracle, the day her life would be decided forever. As the drums beat loudly, matching the anxious beating of her heart, Adera stood in front of the oracle's hut. Her brother Cheek held her hand tightly, his eyes showing her own fear. They had made a secret promise. No matter what the oracle said, they would face it together. The air was thick with the smell of burning incense as Adera went inside. The oracle sat hidden in shadow, her voice a rough whisper. When she finally spoke, her words broke Adera's world into pieces. She was going to be married, not to someone she chose, but to the mean and powerful Chief Oguna, a man twice her age, whose heart was dark and cruel. Betrayal hit Adera hard. Her brother, her protector, stood silently, his face showing his sadness and acceptance. He had been told to keep the oracle's decisions secret, forced by tradition to obey, even if it meant hurting his own sister. Life as Chief Oguna's wife was like being in a beautiful cage. Adera had fancy clothes and jewels, but she had never felt so alone. The laughter and happiness she once knew were gone, replaced by a heavy silence. Her once bright spirit began to fade under Oguna's harsh control. Oguna was a bully, both in his village and at home. He controlled everything, his every wish a command. Adera was nothing more than something he owned, a prize to show off and control. He wouldn't let her see her family or talk to anyone who might question him. Years passed, each one a painful reminder of the life that had been taken from Adera. But even though she felt hopeless, a small spark of hope stayed with her. Adera held on to the memory of her family, to the love she had for her brother. It was this love, this strong bond, that gave her the strength to keep going, to believe that one day somehow she would escape.
Chief Oguna was a man of immense power and unrelenting control. His compound was vast, his wives obedient, and his word law. Adera, barely a child, was thrust into a world where her laughter was stifled and her innocence stolen. She learned quickly to bow her head, to obey without question, and to endure the whispers of her co-wives, who saw her as nothing more than another pawn in Oguna's game of dominance. Years passed, and Adera grew into a woman, her beauty blossoming in secret. When she finally conceived, the village celebrated her as a blessing to Oguna's lineage. But deep inside, Adera's heart was a storm of fear. She had heard the stories of women who bore twins, their cries silenced, their bodies buried in unmarked graves. The night Adera went into labor, the skies wept with rain, and the wind howled like a mourning mother. Alone in her hut with only the midwife, Ajani, for company, Adera screamed through the agony. Hours passed before the first cry pierced the night. A boy. Relief flooded her, but it was short-lived. Minutes later, a second cry followed, a girl. Adera froze, her breath catching in her throat. Ajani's face paled as the realization dawned. "Twins," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This is death, Adera." Adera's instincts roared to life. "No one must know," she hissed. She pressed the babies to her chest, their tiny bodies warm against her skin. "Help me hide them, Ajani, please." For days, Adera pretended she had borne only one child, a boy. She showed him to the village, her face a mask of practiced joy. The girl remained hidden in a hollow beneath the floorboards of her hut, her cries muffled with cloth, her presence known only to Adera and Ajani. But secrets had a way of seeping through cracks. The villagers noticed Adera's prolonged absence, her haggard appearance. Oguna's suspicions grew. One night he demanded to see the child. "Bring him to me," he ordered, his voice like thunder. With trembling hands, Adera presented the boy. But as Oguna held the child, a faint wail rose from beneath the floor. His eyes narrowed. "What is that?" Panic seized Adera. "It's nothing," she stammered. But Oguna's patience was thin. He tore through the floorboards, revealing the hidden infant.
The village erupted in chaos. Adera was dragged before the elders, accused of bringing a curse upon Ukona. That night, as the villagers prepared for the execution, Ajani smuggled Adera and the twins out of the compound. They fled into the forest where the trees stood as silent witnesses to their desperation. A thunderous roar filled the air as the river swelled, its waters rising like an angry god. Oguna's men hesitated, fear in their eyes. Taking her chance, Adera leapt into the river with her twins, the current sweeping them away. Adera's body was never found, but whispers of her bravery echoed across the land. The villagers of Ukona began to question their beliefs, haunted by the image of a mother's unyielding love. In the distant village where Adera had sought refuge, a woman arrived with 2 children, a boy and a girl. She told their story to anyone who would listen, planting the seeds of change in a world bound by fear. Adera's name became a legend, a symbol of defiance, love, and the courage to stand against the tides of tradition. And though her life was brief, her spirit endured, carried on the wind and the whispers of those who dared to dream of freedom.